Oh, how fantastic it feels to be standing back here in front of a camera wearing a uniform. And of course, what better topic to talk about, now that I'm wearing a proper uniform, than regimental coats. Now, the thing about regimental coats is they are very particular garments. They are particular to the regiment, they are particular to the man. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first things first, you'll notice that it's a very tightly fitted garment. In fact, this one is so tightly fitted, I'm not even able to actually close it up all the way. You know, the final metal clasp there, pins used to close the coat on the very top. I'm not able to do so without someone else's assistance, actually. Now, of course, that means I have to sweat into the coat a little bit more. After, a season or two, I'll be able to close it more efficiently on my own without having someone else force the thing shut. But yes, they are very, very tight-fitting pieces of clothing. I mean, not so much to where it's restricting my movement in any way, not really at least, but there really isn't any sort of leftover space, so to say, as far as the actual cloth is concerned. And this is by design. They were made to be very tight-fitting pieces of clothing. You see, whenever a regiment has to request new coats coming in for whatever reason, maybe a new recruit or, one of them is too ragged or something like that, you say they place an order for however many coats they need, and they would be made up sort of in a rough basic size according to what the regiment requested. They're sent over, and they're not just then put together, assembled as it were, the two sides being put together more or less, and then given to a random soldier. Instead, they would actually be, from being received by the regiment, tailor-made, specifically altered by a regimental tailor to where they would be able to fit perfectly, or at least as close to perfectly as you're ever going to get. It's never going to be completely perfect, of course. But they would be tailor-made to fit individual soldiers. You can't just take one regimental coat and then say, oh, you lost yours. Oh, okay, here, take Tom's. He's dead or whatever. He died of dysentery. Here, have his coat for free. It's not going to work so easily as that. Unless the two men are very similarly sized, odds are you won't be able to exchange a coat so readily. They are very specifically made garments for individual men. You'd have to make alterations in order for them to really go back and forth too terribly often. This is a time period, this is a cottage economy time period, well before the days of industrialism. In, say, the First World War, from the recent footage of They Shall Not Grow Old, you see all of those guys, standing on the line, and they're just throwing like, yeah, this one looks good for you, and this tunic looks good for you, here's a pair of boots. They're just throwing clothing all over the place, saying, here, you take this, you take that, you take that, and then they move on, all pre-made, industrial-made to set sizing. You don't have that in the 18th century. There is no industry by which to mass-produce the clothing. Everything is being hand-made, hand-stitched, hand-sewn, and so at that point you may as well make it to an individual soldier. It's going to have to be made individually anyways. You may as well make them fit. And military fashion demanded that the clothing be very, very tight-fitting, very martial in that way. And if I may say, actually, if you compare my current regimental coat to the previous one that I had, you can really, looking between these two images, see the difference in how they fit me and how it affects the overall appearance as a soldier. My old coat was much too big. It was too long. It was too loose. It was just too big. It was missized. It wasn't necessarily poorly made, but it wasn't made to me. It wasn't made properly. It wasn't, hand measured. I sent my measurements to someone over the internet. They didn't hand measure me themselves and make sure every step of the way that it was accurate the same way that I had with this coat. It looks much more slack. There's a lot more slack in it. It looks more baggy. It looks more blob-like in a way when compared with my newer regimental coat, which is much more, well, again, more sleek, more slim-fitting, more martial-looking, but much more professional in a way, I think. Indeed, the coat should have a very distinctive sort of shape. Tight at the very top, even though, I know I'm foregoing that, but you get the idea. Very, tight fitting at the top, and then immediately sloping down and out, sort of giving the soldier more of a wide appearance, making them seem a little bit larger in a way. And then, of course, it ends, I know you can't really see them, but it ends in the tails down below, which are clipped shut, and we'll get to that in a bit here. But a very specific sort of shape, presenting your best face to the enemy, as it were. Always want to make sure you have your shoulders out wide as well, of course. What's more is, of course, not only is it very particular to the man who's wearing it, your coat is also going to be very particular to the regiment that you are with. Of course, one of the most readily obvious ways to show that would be the color of the facings. You see, of course, while the majority of the coat is the wonderful red, very stereotypical, the red, the facings here, sort of the side pieces, are always going to be a different shade, and these will vary on a regiment-to-regiment basis. In the 54th Regiment of Foot, we have a very distinctive marking. This popinjay green is what it's called. In royal regiments, they will have facings of blue. In other regiments, they can have facings of yellow, such as in the 10th Regiment of Foot. They can have facings of black, as in, I think the 64th may have had black facings. If not, I'll provide a correction or some such. But there's also... What other facings are there? There's actually, I think there's red facings in some groups. There's all sorts of different colors. Buff is another very common facing color, and they're all made out to mark out individual different regiments. A very clear, a very easy way to locate from a distance, okay, those are men of the 54th, those are men of the 62nd, those are men of the... You get the idea. But that's not the only way in which these coats are very particular, because of course, in the end, you can only have so many different facings colors. So you need a little bit more to mark out each individual coat to show off that regimental pride. And another one of those ways that you can show that individualness of the coat is actually going to be in the lacing. So if I hold up my cuff here, you'll notice around the buttons that single green stripe. That is specific to the 54th Regiment of Foot, a very particular kind of lacing. Each and every regiment is going to have a different style of lacing during this time period. You'll also notice that the actual buttons, they all have the 54 on there, the 54th Regiment of Foot. Not only is the coat made up with the different colors and design and whatnot for different regiments, but also you're going to have the different lacing. Even the buttons are going to change on a regiment-to-regiment basis. Some of them, such as the foot guards or particular more honored regiments, so to say, they might have much more detailed buttons. As for the 54th Standard Line Infantry Regiment, very simple, we just have the 5-4. And another thing, actually, going back to the facings of the uniform and, all of the buttons lining the side here, is they aren't just for show. They aren't just to make the uniform look a little bit prettier, although it certainly does have that effect. They're actually very practical in their purpose. You see, I'm not going to do it today or here just because of, well, the fact that it's very difficult to do without assistance, again, because the clothing is very tight and we're still sort of sweating into everything. But all of these buttons can actually be undone. Let's see if I can do one in the center here, just to show by way of example. Yes, there we go. See, all the buttons can actually be undone. And if you were to unbutton all of these buttons, again, they serve a purpose. Unbutton all the buttons on the other side, you are able to actually seal the coat closed. You're able to close the coat. You're able to make it a double-breasted coat as opposed to the kind of sort of pseudo-single that we have right now. And of course, when closing the coat, it's a very good piece of kit for winter at that point. This is the summer, this is the winter uniform, this is the Caribbean uniform, this is the Arctic uniform. This is what you get. This is everything. It has to be durable, able to last in all environments, and as such, you may make alterations to it as appropriate. Close the thing, and now you have a lovely winter coat, and it is able to keep you very, very warm indeed. Here's actually a lovely photograph of one of the members of the 54th with his coat closed. There is also, though I'm not able to show you on my person given the relative height of the camera right now, just on the bottom, the actual tails, you'll note here, are able to be held both loosely down. They're able to, go as more traditional tail-looking type thing. You're also able to clip them and make them, open, as it were, more ventilation down at the bottom. Again, another alteration that can be made based on the weather. If it's very warm, you want to have your tails open to allow better airflow, and if it's very, very cold, you can actually open them back up, go to a more traditional sort of coat style. Well, I think that's enough rambling about coats for today. I do apologize if some of the editing there is a little choppy, because I've been rambling on for quite some time. I want to try and fit everything together and make it actually presentable to the public and whatnot. But of course, either way, until the next time, my dear viewer, I am and I shall remain your most humble and obedient of servants. and you can expect far more videos in future with this uniform.